Thank you. Welcome councillors and staff and anyone who may attend by Zoom. Finance Committee meeting will be live streamed via Zoom webinar facilities and the link is available on the website. Reporting to the council meeting or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or transmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. And the meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on the council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gundungurra and Darug people and respects the history and culture of the elders both past and present. At the moment we have a quorum of 5 councillors. We have an apology from Councillor McKibben, who is running late. We have a previous apology from Councillor Graham, who said she is running late, and Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Bruce Watt has a current leave of absence. I'd like to move in a second to acknowledge that leave of absence. Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hayden. All in favour? Declarations of interest? Any declarations? I have a declaration in confidential item 0601. I have a non-pecuniary less than significant interest in that the Oberon Garden Club has sort of 3, 5, 6 contribution, and my wife is an office bearer of the Garden Club. The minutes of the previous Finance Committee, which was held on the 27th of April 2021, were accepted at the ordinary council meeting on the 18th of May 2021 at resolution 02180521. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? No matters arising. First, item 0501, the integrated 2022-23 integrated planning and reporting. At the moment, there are 11 recommendations. I would propose that we take them one at a time, as opposed to trying to do an omnibus vote. So I'll read them out as we come to them. If that's satisfactory to all councillors are here. You happy with that? All right with you? All right. So we'll go with the first recommendation. And that is that council place the Oberon Community Strategic Plan 2019 to 2040, which is attachment 1 in your attachments, on public exhibition for 28 days in accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and seek community feedback during the exhibition period. Do I have a move in a second, please? Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tucker. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's a good operational plan and happy to move it.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're on talking attachment 1, not the operational plan at the moment, but so it's the community strategic plan.
Yes.
Happy to second it. I just have one question about terminology as you look through the recommendations. In some cases, it refers to placing the various attachments on exhibition for comment. In others, it talks about endorsing and placing on public exhibition. And in others, it just talks about endorsing. I just want clarification of what the impact is of those that we endorse. What does endorse actually mean? Does it mean we've adopted it? And if we are adopting it, shouldn't that wait until after the exhibition period?
No, it means that we are happy to put it on a public exhibition. But for example, this community strategic plan has already been accepted by the previous council. So we are placing it back on exhibition for comment because we're required to update the community strategic plan within 6 months of the election of the new council. The community engagement strategy, for example, is a policy which has previously been endorsed, and that is giving this council an opportunity to endorse it. Any other comments?
Through the chair, the only addition I would make is that the endorse of the community engagement strategy simply remove the process we went through when we originally undertook consultation with the community strategic plan. So it's just removing that bit and using that strategy as our document moving forward for our consultation.
So that's endorsing it.
Yep. So endorse the changes.
But in this case, it doesn't
Exhibit.
say endorse. It just is placed on exhibition.
Yeah, so once again, using your example, the exhibition of the community strategic plan is for comment. So you are not making a decision. You're placing it. The decision you make is to place it on exhibition. The second one, you've made the comment around there's endorsement, there is endorsing, there is placing, and there is noting. The endorsing, there may be some minor changes made to a specific document, which we're asking you to endorse, but then place that component on exhibition as well. So you will get another opportunity to then endorse it.
Anything that we endorse now still comes back to us for adoption at a later date.
That's correct.
Lovely. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you. And happy to second the motion.
Any other councillors got a comment? All right, I'll put the first recommendation that we place the Oberon Community Strategic Plan 2019-2040 on public exhibition. All in favour? That's unanimous. Right, recommendation 2, endorse the revised community engagement strategy, policy 1120, which is attachment 2, and place the policy on public exhibition for 28 days and seek community feedback during the exhibition period. Mover and seconder. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trembath. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy with that going on exhibition.
Councillor Trembath.
And on exactly the same in certain detail.
Any other councillors, comments? I'll put the motion that we endorse the community strategic plan, community engagement strategy policy 1120. All in favour? That's unanimous. Item 3, place the draft 2022 to 26 delivery program, which is attachment 3A and 3B, which has been updated with financial data from the 2022-23 to 2025-26 financial years in accordance with the Local Government Act 1993. And placed on public exhibition for 28 days and seek community feedback during the exhibition period. Mover and second, please. Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hayden.
I just can't find them in the papers. It's in that attachment.
Attachment 3A and 3B.
Well, mine's not reading the same as yours. Okay, I'm right now.
You're looking at the minutes of the last meeting, were you?
She's gold.
All right, okay.
Yep.
So, Councillor Tucker, you moved it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, it is just deciding to place it on exhibition for comment, so no problem there.
Councillor Hayden,
Yes, I'm happy to second that. Now I found it.
any other comments? I move that we place the draft 2022-26 delivery program attachments 3A and 3B on public exhibition for 28 days. All those in favour? Thank you. Passed. Item 4, endorse both versions of the draft 2022-23 operational plan and long-term financial plan, attachments 4A and 4B, and resolve to publicly exhibit the plans for 28 days in accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993. Submissions received during the public exhibition period will be considered and presented to the June ordinary council meeting prior to final adoption. Do I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trembath. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move that motion to put them on public exhibition.
Councillor
And
Trembath.
I second that.
Any other comments? No. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of queries. I think it's the most appropriate time to bring these up because this is the section that most directly relates to our choice between which of the possible rate increases to go for, other than the 0.7 or the 2.1%. At last week's works meeting, I had some difficulty following some of the figures for how those rate increases would work and how they were spread across the different funds and the different rate categories, or between ad valorem and base rates. So I sent an email to the GM and the Director of Corporate Services just to ask some questions about how those calculations work, and they've to some extent been answered, and thank you to the Director for that. But the Director has also offered to sit down with me and go through the way those calculations work, because it is difficult to do just on emails. So I certainly intend to do that sometime in the next week or two. But I also made the suggestion that maybe that should be opened up to any other councillors who are struggling with the way those calculations work. And also, as I put in a follow-up email, not just the way the calculations work, but what the processes would be if council was ever of a mind to alter the balance between different rating categories, or between general and TI, or whatever it might be. I assume there must be some way that those relative proportions between categories can be altered. At the moment, the calculations are just based on equally spreading them out between all categories. But I am interested to know what the process is if council, either this year or any other future year, was of a mind to alter that balance. So that's the other thing that I'm going to be asking to be addressed when we have our sit down. So that was the first thing, just to let other councillors know that we intend to do that. And secondly, just a thought I had this morning about a possible timing for that, particularly if other councillors are interested, whether we might want to combine that with our pre-meeting briefing session next week to avoid an extra trip into the offices and that sort of training session followed by a briefing session.
Couple of issues. One is that we do not rate all land the same. The allocation across the whole LGA varies from farmland, business, rural residential, rural, and large block.
Yeah, but that wasn't what I meant.
So there is quite a disparity of
Yes,
rates.
I agree.
The second thing is that in terms of council, there will be a New South Wales wide review of rates, and that will be led by a large degree by your general office, I believe, where we'll be given quite specific, I'm sure, about what the process we need to undertake. That is where, if we were going to change the weighting of various categories of land rates, that would happen. I think at this stage, probably the best bet for most councils, in fact all councils, would be to understand how we levy rates as they are at the moment, because the changing of the rate categories and the rates levied on those categories is quite a different matter entirely, and that is a much more difficult process to understand how we allocate the rate cap. And of course, remember, the rate cap is not just 0.7 or 2.1%. It is actually in absolute dollar terms as well.
And just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, yes, I certainly understand that the rates are applied at different rates across those categories. The point I was making is that at the moment, the way the figures have been presented, that the 0.7 or the 2.1 have been equally applied across all those categories, and I was trying to understand, or I will hope to understand when we have our session, whether it's just me or whether other councillors are involved. I would hope to understand what the process involves if council did ever want to alter that. Now, what you've just said may partly answer that, but I would still like to go through it in more detail.
I have no problem with that. Probably fine to do it.
Through the chair, there's probably a little bit more work to go into something like that, probably led by the director, in terms of how that that workshop would be undertaken, but it certainly would be our intention to open up to all councillors, not just individual councillors. So
And if a week is too short a time to prepare, then fair enough. I was just trying to think of ways of reducing the burden on people coming in for meetings all the time. And I'm not talking about a formal meeting, just an informal training.
yeah, through the chair, that's how the intention of this would be. You're in a very unique situation at this point in time where, as the mayor's indicated, the audit office releasing bits and pieces of the rate review was undertaken in 2018, but it's been systematically released, and at some point in time there's going to have to be an update on exactly what you've asked for. To have some information on that would be absolutely right in councillors' front of mind when that occurs.
Yeah, and one further
Yes.
topic to query on while we're on that recommendation 4, and it relates to the way our plant replacement operates over the long term. I'm not wanting to go back and revisit the discussion we had last week on the 22-23 replacement program, but I would like to understand better how that works over a number of years. So when our plant gets used on any job, it gets put down at an hourly rate, and that money covers certainly the operations of that plant, maintenance, the registration, all that sort of stuff. Does that hourly rate also fund the replacement program? So does enough money accumulate from those hourly rates used on jobs to fund the annual replacement program?
Yeah, through the chair, that's certainly how that does operate in terms of the life, the whole purchase price of the vehicle divisible by its
All right.
anticipated turnover.
So it's a self-funding process, including those replacements. And the reason for asking is in the program that we looked at last week, the spreadsheet got showed a total of 790,000, and we approved replacements to the value of 670,000. So I assume that means the remaining 120 needs to be carried over and added on to some future year. And that same spreadsheet showed substantial amounts in the next 2 financial years, well over $1 million in each case. And a note in the assumptions, 22-23 long-term financial plan assumptions, on page 153 for the 2.1% option, it mentions council's budget of 670,000 per
Councillor
year.
Tucker, we don't have the information here, so would you like to take that up with the general manager separately after the event? Because at the moment, no one has that information to hand, and it is getting really down into operational level details.
Well, the simple question that I was trying to get to was whether that shortfall between 670,000 per year and the next couple of years of over $1 million, whether that indicates that we are likely to get a long way behind in our plant replacement.
Well, that should have been the first question, I think.
Well, but it needed some explanation. That's why I was asking.
General manager?
Every year we use our expertise in our staff to quantify and qualify what plant replacement we propose to put up for the following years. that takes all those things into consideration that you have talked about, but it also takes into consideration about plant usage, how much is it beneficial to do all these replacements, and that's what our tech services director and fleet manager look at when they put their plans up each year. So we acknowledge that even though there is a 10-year rolling plan, not all the time do we replace that piece of equipment, because we're of the opinion that it hasn't met its mark, or it still has value, or there's still use and life in that piece of the plant prior to putting it up for replacement. So there's a little bit of investigation undertaken prior to going into a replacement plan.
And I certainly understand that's the way it operates on a year-by-year basis. I was just concerned that the figures we've got in front of us from last week suggest that we might be digging a hole for ourselves and getting a long way behind.
So through the chair, that's where some of the recommendations brought forward by Morris and Lowe will need to take precedent in the coming years, when potentially the significant amount of capital works changes to a more normal scenario.
That's all I have.
Councillor McKibben?
Thanks, Ben. I understand we're on recommendation 4, and we're obviously able to ask anything in relation to the papers that fall behind that. On page 20, I note that the town improvement has a factor for farmland and residential and business, but not for rural residential. I would have thought if some farmland falls into a town improvement levy, that some rural residential would fall into town improvement.
There are in fact some areas of farmland which exist within the town area,
Yes, I
and
understand.
that's where the TI comes into farmland. I'm not sure that there's any large block residential at the moment that comes inside the
Thought
town
there
boundaries.
was, because of rezoning, I might be wrong.
Through the chair, the town improvement district is the thing that derives
Yes.
what makes up the town improvement. And my understanding would be that they are the zonings in which are that form part of that town improvement
It's not an
district.
R because it, yeah.
The-
So there's no rural residential falls in it, but there's farmland that falls into it.
Through the chair, that's correct. There's a
At the
A
time
little
these
bit.
reports were ran,
Right, so if in the future, some rural residential does fall into it as a result of the rezoning of farmland, we need to put a factor in.
through the chair, that will only become the case, one, if council resolve that they want to relook at the district, the town improvement district. Two, relook at the whole lot, then start again. Which is, or three, even resolve to have a town improvement fund for the year.
But through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could, but if you have a piece of farmland that is currently in the town improvement area.
Yep.
And it was to be zoned in the future, so it was cut up and zoned rural residential, that would still be in the town improvement area. So we would have to have a factor that applied to that,
It would automatically fall within that category, yes.
which, yes, exactly, but we don't have a rate for that.
No, through my understanding is that there is no land there to do that.
So if it was to fall in, what would the rate be determined as? Or when, I know you're saying it doesn't exist at the moment. Are you saying council then have to determine a rate that applied to that?
Through the chair, I would suspect that what you would do is take the rate in which the land is categorised against now and formulate a number based on the new zoning. So if farmland become rural res, the farmland would remove, and it'll be replaced by the rural res.
Understand, but what rate factor would apply? You've got 002492760.
I think, Councillor McKibben, that
Yeah.
Sorry.
this doesn't exist, and having a discussion about what it may be
Yeah.
when we don't have all the information. For example, I can imagine if a piece of farmland on the
Yeah.
northern boundary of Oberon suddenly got rezoned to rural residential with 10 blocks, we would probably apply a rate that was substantially above the rate that was overall rate that was applied to that farm now. But
That's right. So
and that is a discussion to have when that becomes an issue.
okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not likely or envisaged in the next future for this coming year.
It could be when we do our review of the planning documents.
So at that stage, we would then have to determine a rate.
We would.
Approach.
We may have to turn.
Sorry, the rates and the ad valorums are calculated after the fact. So when a new piece of land gets developed and changes classification, the following year is when the ad valorem will change. So take, for example, if a parcel of land was changed from farmland within the zone to rural residential, the supplementary will go through in the 2023 year. It will then fall rateable the following year. Once we work out the amount of land value that has changed, we can then apportion and add the ad valorem to it. Unfortunately, it is reactive, not proactive.
Fine. And if I could, Mr. Mayor, could I just clarify through Technical Services Director in answer to Councillor Tucker? In the rates we charge out for our work, I thought that included a depreciation factor, not a replacement value. Is that correct? For the plant and equipment?
Through the chair, no, not for, not to do anything with water. It's basically just on a works, well, an hourly rate recovery.
So does that mean, and I think this is what Councillor Tucker was asking, and in what we charge out and what we factor into our rates, does that at all take account of putting any money into a reserve for the possible replacement of plant and equipment in the future?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct. And certainly that hourly rate per the life of the purchase price for then over the life of the vehicle is then what is charged as an hourly rate as a recovery.
So that is a depreciation factor that at some stage gets to zero over the same, and it doesn't have to be the same as the tax rate. If it's, tax rate, it might be a bit less than 5 years.
Correct.
I realise that councils are different, but we might write it over 10 years. But it's based on the value of the plant and equipment. So if you buy a piece, just to use an example, if you buy a piece of equipment 100,000 and you have 10 years, you can depreciate it 10,000 and you factor that 10,000 over the whole work of that piece of plant over the year.
It's a straight line depreciation.
Yes, right. But if you then have to go and pay for a new piece of equipment in 10 years' time, 160,000, you've allowed for 100,000, but the extra 60,000 you haven't allowed for. Is that how I'm reading it?
Well, that's a projection you've got to, you would have to make as an offset. That's correct.
Right, just to understand it so that members understand.
So through the chair, just to confuse
Yes.
everyone a little bit more, is that you may have depreciated that vehicle to zero,
But you still,
but you still get a trade.
yes.
So
That
there are
shows us the
some,
profit. Yeah, that shows us a profit at the end, though. And then you've got-
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben, anyone else? Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the attachment for A, it's in 4B as well. But for the question, we'll go with page 125 in 4A, note 8. Says an operational decision was made to accumulate all computing and IT costs into one account. This has resulted in CCTV, consultants IT, cybersecurity, IT hardware and IT software, along with other miscellaneous IT costs, being combined into a new IT expenses line item. If we then go to page 123 with the income and expenditure budget and the final forecast for the year 2023, now we'll look down the column where the notes are. In note A, note 8, in our final forecast, we're not taking anything over for CCTV, consultants IT, cyber security. But we are taking over amounts for IT hardware and IT software, $500,000. Then we come to the new line, which is 870,000. So I just don't understand why we've got 800, combining it all into one at 870,000. Then we've also still got two amounts that were there carried over, $500,000 carried over. That doesn't look quite add up, I don't think.
I actually think that's an error in the table. I do apologize. I think the IT hardware and the IT software line item should not exist anymore. They should be nil, and the 870 should just remain.
The 870 should be
I
total.
should be the total, yes.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
should just be the 870. Can
Sure.
I take that and confirm and come back?
We can. That would be good. We would probably then just check those figures at the bottom of the column because they will not be right now, I don't think. And this rather obscure miscellaneous IT costs, if that 870,000 is correct, there is a significant balance which must be down to miscellaneous IT costs, because the others don't add up to 870,000. So maybe we should list as another line item miscellaneous IT costs as to what it is. Because I think if you add up 9195, 17, 18,000, and then $500,000, you don't get to 870. So there may be an error there, isn't it? Either that or miscellaneous IT costs is a bit more miscellaneous.
Sorry, councillor, can you just clarify those numbers you were just talking about there where you're doing those additions?
Well, the CCTV, 9,100.
So you're comparing a last year's budget to the forecast in this budget?
Yep.
So,
What I'm saying is, if we're forecasting 870,000,
yep.
there's a significant increase on last year's budget.
Yep.
And the only explanation is that it must be miscellaneous IT costs. So if that is the case, miscellaneous IT costs is a significant amount.
Nice. So just to clarify, the
And I think
definitely,
it should be listed there as a separate line item if it's that much, because 9,100, 9,500, and
Cyber security.
500 cyber security
Cybersecurity,
is next, is another 18, that's 36 in round figures, 36,000. Then you've got the $500,000 down with the 76 and the 439 rough figures. So you've got 576. So you've got 300,000 that's not accounted for in your forecast, which in your notes says the only other thing it can be is miscellaneous IT costs. So 300,000 of miscellaneous IT costs is a significant amount, I think. And if we're spending that much on miscellaneous IT costs, what is it?
no, we can, through the chair, we can definitely provide some additional details. There's definitely some increased IT infrastructure that is in the forecast for the
Yeah,
budget.
I'm not saying it's not
And it
there,
has
but
to
I'm
be,
saying we need some
yeah,
information on what it is.
consolidated, and we note
Like
that,
it's
we'll note that.
clearly incorrect.
Well, through the chair, just given that there has been some acknowledgement that this may be incorrect.
Yeah.
I think that it's paramount that we in fact provide that information as part of this in order to clarify that.
Yeah, I think
So if we could get a breakdown of it, I think what Nick said,
Yeah.
get a breakdown of the IT costs for 2022-23, because they're obviously 300,000 above this year. So there's,
we forecasted more for 2023. Okay, there's going to cost more. We need to know what it is. What it is, yeah.
300,000 is about a 40% increase. So it's-
And it's the same in attachment 4B. It's just similar.
What's the
Business.
reasonable time to get the update?
Oh, we can do that very quickly. We'll turn that around.
Shouldn't get it out by tomorrow.
Yep.
Close of business.
We'll get that out tomorrow.
Have you that?
Yep, more than happy.
All right. Councillor Hope.
Is that miscellaneous IT anything to do with the new website that's getting built?
Through the chair, there's quite a bit of IT infrastructure that we're looking to put in, a whole new open office proviso that we're putting in place. There is also that at some point, we're going to have to do a carryover where we're in fact running two systems, so we can pull the ones out of an old system and incorporate into a new system. But my understanding was that there was a component of that last year's money, which the councillor rightly outlines is involved in that. So it's once again a matter of just providing that information to councillors before we put it out. And the community, mind you.
Well, you just note on the minutes there that update to be provided by close of business on the 3rd of May. Councillors?
Just through the chair, we haven't got to that resolution yet, but there is a number 11 that said if there's some stuff that council agree to and allow me to do some edits with the justification, whether you'd be happy for that to continue.
Yeah, there'll be others.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
And that's all on 4A.
Councillor Gibbon?
On the same page as Councillor Pinckney, I've looked at all this online, so I'm just trying to go back now with the hard copy to have a look at what I looked at, but page 123, about 4 items above where Councillor Ketley, there was a reduction in cleaning costs, which I'm very happy with, 64,400 to 32,152. That's quite a substantial decrease. So is it greater efficiencies in our cleaning, or what does that do?
Through the chair, this year we really sat down and looked at what was needed and what was not needed and made sure that we were doing things a bit more effectively and efficiently. We also compared historical data. So while we're looking at last year's budget compared to this year's budget, last year's may have been overspent in some categories, which meant we could reduce the budget this year while still maintaining that same level. Cleaning chances are cleaning are one of those categories where that's happened.
So through you, Mr. Chair, has that meant overspent or over budgeted?
Over budgeted.
Over budgeted, thank you.
Yeah.
And similarly, if I could, I noticed that the same with advertising. We went a little bit high last year in our budgeting, is that right?
Through the chair, advertising also includes advertising for positions as well as other bits and pieces,
All right.
which when we're forecasting next year, we're not looking for the same quantity, I guess, as previous year was.
Thank you.
Through the chair, there is also, if council will remember, there's been a change to the Local Government Act that says how you advertise certain things has now changed. So the need to advertise things in certain areas may have led to that, also that that reduction.
And if I could, there's probably a note to it, I didn't get time to read, I think it's note 2, in relation to obviously borrowing costs, they've gone up substantially. Is that, and that's taking account for next year of the 3 million for the STP and the additional funds for the hub?
Through the chair, yes. So
And the existing borrowings we had?
yes. So
And any further borrowings not taken account of for the STP, I take it at this stage?
at this stage in the long-term financial plans, we have factored in another $2.5 million borrowing, but that is not due to start until the 23-24 financial year. The amount for borrowing charges this year is specifically in relation to the additional $1.3 million for the community hub, the $3 million existing STP, plus the LEAs that we already have.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham's joined the meeting. Councillor Ketley, you had something to
I think we just answered the last, as part of the last question.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? I'll move I'll put the motion for item 4, and that is endorse both versions of the 22-23 operational plan and long-term financial plan, which is attachments 4A and 4B. All in favour? Unanimous. Item 5. And that is endorse both versions of the draft statement of revenue policy, which is attachment 5A and 5B for public exhibition. Noting the document includes the 2022-23 fees and charges and rating structure in accordance with Chapter 15, Part 1 of the Local Government Act 1993. I'll move and second, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the endorsement to put them on public display.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to endorse both versions for of the statement of revenue policy to be placed on public exhibition.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll put the motion that we endorse both versions of the draft statement of revenue policy. All in favour? It's unanimous. Motion is carried. Item 6, note previously endorsed infrastructure asset management plan, water and sewage asset management plan, and the building asset management plan at attachments 6A, 6B and 6C in accordance. I think this is meant to have place on public exhibition in accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993.
Hasn't it already been on public exhibition, Mr. Mayor?
These are just noting
Yeah.
the
Oh, sorry,
existing
no, yes.
documents that you've already
We have
endorsed,
it.
Well, hang on.
and it's outside the committee.
So just note that, yes, sorry. My mistake.
Through the chair, it's noting them because those documents assist in how all the other documents have been prepared.
And I think they've already been on public exhibition.
They have,
They have,
actually.
yeah.
So, mover and seconder to note the previously endorsed management plans. Councillor McKibben. Councillor McKibben. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These have obviously had a lot of consideration and been on public exhibition previously, and I know a lot of previous council considered these in great depth, so yes, I'm very happy with that.
Councillor McKibben.
No, no, further to add to it. Happy to second.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion that we note the previously endorsed management plans. All in favour? None against. Motion is moved, is carried. Item 7, place the road assets management plan on public exhibition as described in attachment 6D in accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993. Moving and seconded, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to propose this road asset management plan we put on public exhibition. It's a very lengthy and detailed document. It's taken a lot of work by the consultants, and I think that actually is one of the things recommended by the Morrison Lowe report, which is being actioned anyway, and it certainly gives us a much better insight into our road infrastructure. So I'm very happy to recommend to be placed on public exhibition.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to second that. It's a thorough report and happy for it to go on public exhibition.
Any more comments? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of brief comments as we go through. I did send an email yesterday asking for a bit more information on roads funding, and that was only yesterday, so I'm certainly not expecting answers yet, and probably not answers now, but just commenting. On page 380, it talks about, or it recommends the maintenance budget for sealed roads and for unsealed roads. Dot points 2 and 3 of the recommendations. And I'm just hoping that within our proposed budget that those amounts have been allocated, or whether it is possible to give any advice at the moment as to whether those are the amounts that have been provided for sealed and unsealed roads maintenance.
Through the chair, a significant amount of work's gone in behind the scenes to in fact look at those budgets and align them accordingly. So there is a considerable increase in budget allocation for the areas in which you talk about in this instance. I'll note that at the Works Committee, we did also outline that we would break down what those capital works and those major roads were going to be, the funding supplies and the funding allocations towards each of them roads. I'm more than happy to give an outline of where that maintenance budget, where that maintenance money is proposed, and where the breakdown from rural unsoiled to rural soiled to maintenance is.
Yeah, right, just in response to the email will be fine. I don't need those figures now, unless they want these, that's fine, but I was just interested because that is in line with the way I think we should be going. I do think there is a need to move to a bit less construction and a bit more maintenance, so I was happy to see those recommendations. My one other question in relation to the road asset management plan is on page 387, table 5, strategy 4.1.3, roads reseal and resheeting program. And the activity is develop and implement the road reseal and resheet program. It's similar to a question that I asked at the Works Committee last week. And so I am keen to see the figures for how we are going, particularly with our bitumen reseals and how many years it takes to turn over an old seam road network. So it's just re-stressing my request from last week to get that information. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion to place the road asset management plan on public exhibition. All in favour? Unanimously. Item 8, endorse the workforce management plan as attachment 7 in accordance with Local Government Act of 1993. Moving to second, please. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the workforce management plan. I did notice that the staff has dropped by around 15 employees from 19 to 20. Have we gone up now, or is that still under that amount?
Through the chair, there is a number of vacancies within our organisation that we're looking to, in fact, get back to a level of normality. What council will also be aware of, that there's within 12 months of new council, the general manager will bring back a proposed structure review, and that's something that we'll need to discuss in the upcoming months. The rationale behind keeping the workforce management plan as it is at this point in time is purely based on that requirement under the Act that says that I'll be bringing a revised structure to council for their consideration within 12 months of the new council.
Councillor McKibben.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good document. I suppose when I looked at the table at the rear, which is, attraction and retention, which is on page 429. I can't read the actual page number of this. There seems to be a double up on the page. It is 429. Thank you. Noting that the problems, and it may not have hit the local government as much as it's hit private enterprise at the moment, but the situation out there in private enterprise, I know, experience is pretty horrendous at the moment, with salaries people being poached, and suddenly on quite large salary increases. I know of one recently where someone was offered $30,000 more of a shift company, and I just I note what's said in here, and we may have to put in our risk management plan. I would suggest it may be an item that we need to include in our risk management plan.
Through the chair, it's an item that already exists in our risk management plan.
But it might
based
have
on
to
a number of
be-
things.
It might be the severity and likely and the frequency that may have to increase.
Through the chair, all I will say is that council's been made very much aware of the issues had in securing a finance manager / chief financial officer and the and those sort of things are prevalent in local government as well.
Thank you. And I'm quite happy to second the report.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of quick questions. Firstly, has the workforce management plan actually been updated for this year, or the statistics where it gives dates only seem to refer to 2020?
Through the chair, the rationale behind keeping the workforce management plan as it is at this point was purely on the basis that it's 2022, which runs till June of this year, and we'll be looking to undertake a review of that quite substantially when a structure review is taken into consideration. So it was a, do I reinvent the wheel now, or do I have another go
I
later?
guess that might have been the
Yeah,
case. but I
that's
wanted to
exactly what
clarify.
it is.
And the second question relates to the table that Councillor McKibben was just referring to, starting on page 429. So it gives the actions, the whole long list of proposed actions, and columns for 4 years from 1920 up to 22-23. I assume the ticks in the columns mean the years in which the action was intended to take place. But it doesn't give any information about whether they have actually been done or what our current progress is. It talks about the action and the measures, but nothing there to tell us how far progressed we are on each.
Through the chair, it's one of our key working documents as we work towards each year. As they said, they form part of each of the managers' KPIs in terms of how they progress these things. There are a couple which would be ongoing all the time, as well as some that have had some creep based on different things. But there's certainly things of how we would like to see them progressed. Some of the things have stalled on the back of cost. 429, the perfect example is the cost of a salary review. Based on the last 2 years, it was not considered even close to needing to undertake something like that, given the nature of where we're at the moment. But there are things that are ongoing, and there are things that need to be reviewed periodically.
Yeah, so I'm sure there are
You're
some
correct.
which get done and they're finished and
Yep,
done with,
that's
and others are ongoing.
And some creep.
And I'm sure COVID has affected the progress on some of them as well. And just wondering if it's feasible just to get an update on where things are at on each of those, which have been completed, which are ongoing, or whether there is a new expected completion date due to delays.
Through the chair, I usually do that as part of my end of year performance review, where I give an update on where things are up to and whether they've met or haven't met that mark. But I'm more than happy to provide an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion to endorse the workforce management plan. In favour? Carried unanimously. Item 9, note that the draft 2022-23 operational plan and long-term financial plan have been prepared in line with the objectives contained in Council's Community Strategic Plan and the integrated planning and reporting requirements within the Local Government Act of 1993. Mover and second, please. Councillor Tucker and Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I assume that's a required procedural motion we have to move, so I'm happy to move it.
Councillor Hayden.
Happy to second the note.
Anyone else? Any other comments? I'll put the motion that we note the draft 2022-23 operational plan has been prepared in line with the objectives of the Council's Community Strategic Plan. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10, note the long-term financial plan will be amended annually as more accurate information comes to hand. Income and expenditure forecasts become more accurate, and Council will consider and utilise a range of options in achieving a balanced budget over the life of the long-term financial plan, including but not limited to realising efficiencies and cost reductions within council operations, applying reserve funds, reducing or rescheduling capital expenditure, and increasing revenue through possible borrowings to fund specific programs and initiatives. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker,
The same comment. I assume that we're required to have that for some legal reason, and we didn't move it.
Happy to second that.
any other councillors? I'll move that particular motion. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11 authorises the general manager to make any necessary editorial and content changes to the integrated planning and reporting documents for public exhibition in order to give effect to council's resolutions. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Yes, this I think is necessary in case there are changes that need to be made. We've already discussed some earlier today. Earlier this afternoon, raised by Councillor McKechnie. So I think that that's a necessary in order to have these in the best form possible. They go on public exhibition.
Councillor Hayden.
Happy to second his, to,
The motion. Second motion.
there you go,
All right.
no words.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion that we authorise the general manager to make necessary editorial or content change. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, so that is now dealt with item 0501. Now, at this point, moving into confidential. So in accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government General Regulations of 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the media and the public. And the reasons for this particular closed session is the report contains matters which relate to section 10A1 to 3 of the Local Government Act 1993. And the report item contains matters and information listed in section 10A2 of the Act, which refers to personal matters or personnel matters concerning particular individuals and other than councillors and the personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer. So can I have a mover and seconder to take us into confidential, please? Councillor McKibben and Councillor Tucker. Councillor McKibben. Well, sorry, let's get this mover and seconder done.
Yeah, I'm very happy to move.
Yeah.
Just need to pause the-
All right, sorry.
Pause the recording.
Yep.
I'm very happy to move.
During the confidential closed session, there was one item decided. It is item 0601, Financial Assistance Program for 2022-23. And the council resolved that council approve the allocation of section 356 financial assistance to the value of $80,000 for inclusion in the draft 2022-23 financial year budget. That was passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will now go back into, we will now complete the meeting and thank you for your attendance and your work. And closing the meeting at 4:50 p.m.